Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam, and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies. And today I want to tell you about 20, not 10, 20 of the absolute best movies you can currently watch on Netflix. Now, for those of you that watch the show weekly, there are going to be some repeats on here because these are the best. So naturally, I've talked about a lot of them before. There are a couple of new ones on here. There's a couple of hidden gems. There's a couple of classics a lot of people have seen that you might not know are on Netflix because Netflix does such a shit job of letting you know what's on the platform. And these are in no particular order because they're just 20 of the best. They're not a particular genre, so they're really impossible to rank. Yet, I'm going to go ahead and start this list with The Raid Redemption, which was also mentioned on my Flicks of the Week this week, but I do have to talk about this movie a little bit more. This is such a good action movie. It came out years ago. It takes place in Indonesia. Very, very good martial arts movie, but it's not just a bunch of punching and kicking. There's a lot of that, but there's also a lot of shooting and just really, really great action. This movie does such a good job of not doing what so many martial arts movies do and does not have the protagonist just fighting off people one at a time. They're coming up through holes in this building, down hallways, there's broken glass, there's blood. The violence in this movie is so creative. And similarly, there is a Netflix original movie that was just recently released called The Night Comes For Us. Some of the same cast members, very, very similar style. Not as good in my opinion, but still a very good and very bloody Netflix original film. Speaking of Netflix originals, Outlaw King is, in my estimation, the best Netflix original movie to have come out to date. Now, it is going to have a big contender with Roma coming out in December, but I'll be talking about that more in the upcoming weeks. But Outlaw King takes place in Scotland. It is the historical sequel to Braveheart. It's not a direct sequel to the movie, but historically, this is what happened after the events of Braveheart with William Wallace, where Robert the Bruce took up the charge for the fight of independence for the Scots. I got a lot of positive comments on the channel on this movie as well. A lot of people agreeing with me. A lot of Scottish people agreeing with me as this being a great movie. And a lot of articles written about the historical accuracies with this movie, just further backing up this being one of the best. If you're more interested in that movie, I did a full in-depth review. There's a link to that in the description. Kind of keeping with this bloody theme, there's another really bloody movie that I really, really like. In fact, I think it's one of the best thrillers to have come out in recent years, and that is Green Room. Now, this stars Anton Yelchin. It's one of his last movies that he did before he was killed by his Jeep Wrangler. But it also stars Patrick Stewart. It's directed by Jeremy Saulnier, who's one of the most interesting directors, new young directors working today. I loved his previous film, Blue Ruin, which comes on and off of Netflix. But right now you can watch Green Room. He also did a Netflix original called Hold the Dark, which I really liked, but it's a tough one to recommend, so it doesn't really make this list. However, if you did like that one, I would estimate you'll like Green Room even more because it is a tighter narrative. For just an all-out classic and one of my top 10 movies of all time, Michael Mann's Heat. This is an epic, epic crime movie. It's definitely Michael Mann's masterpiece. It's one of the best in its genre as a modern-day crime, cops, and robbers movie. It so beautifully balances the cops and the bad guys, even to the point that the casting is similar. There are similar-looking actors on either side of the cops and the robbers. Very, very interesting stuff there, but also just beautiful cinematically. The cinematography in this is amazing. The acting is incredible. It's got the best, what I will go ahead and say is the best shootout in movie history. If you have one that's better than the shootout in Heat, let me know in the comments, but I'll go ahead and tell you now, you're just wrong. Another just classic from the 90s is Seven. It's still on Netflix. Watch it while you can. This one holds up so well. Even with Kevin Spacey being the absolute creep that he turned out to be, you can still watch this movie because he's like the worst person on the planet in this movie. Major spoiler alert. I should have said that before talking about Kevin Spacey, but fuck it. Even if you know the twist in this movie because it's been spoiled by people before me, it's still so good to watch. It looks like it was filmed yesterday, but it was shot on film. Had an interesting chemical process that made the blackness in the movie really, really rich, which works for the story. It's such a well-told story and such a dark one. I love this movie every time I watch it, and it's amazing that you can love a movie that is just so dark. It's that well done. Another dark one that I love, another just absolute favorite of mine, is No Country for Old Men. It's possibly the Coen brothers' best, although it may not be my favorite. I think I really do like Fargo and The Big Lebowski more for personal reasons, but No Country for Old Men is possibly their tightest movie. It's so well told, and it's such a difficult story to tell. Even if you still don't like the last 10 minutes, the rest of the movie is so engaging and interesting to watch, and it's got so many fun lines, and then so many scenes that have no dialogue that are still so interesting to watch as they unfold. So I love this one. And another note, just on a Netflix original, so you're getting a lot more than 20 recommendations out of this list, is the Coen brothers' latest film, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, just came out on Netflix. It is a Netflix original, only on Netflix and a few select theaters. I really liked it. It doesn't really fit onto this list, as all 20 of these I think are better than The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, but I really did like it, and if you want to see my full review on that, there's a link to that in the description as well. LA Confidential, for another Kevin Spacey movie. I think I've got one more with him in it on this list, I'm not sure how that happened, but I love this one. It's such a good, gritty cop movie. It takes place in LA in the 1950s, which I love just the aesthetic of that era, but there's also a lot of like political things going on that are really interesting in this one as well. It takes place during Christmas, so it's a great time of year to watch it. The performances are great. Russell Crowe really stands out in this. This one was before Gladiator, I believe, and this is when he was really sort of coming into his own as an actor and really getting noticed. But a lot of great performances. Guy Pearce, who I think is one of the best actors and most underrated actors working today. He's got a really great role in it. There's a great shootout in this as well. So just a cool cop movie. The Godfather Part 1 and 2. Part 3 is on Netflix, but it does not make this list because I think that's a total shit movie. But Part 1 and 2 are masterpieces. They're not even my favorite gangster movie. They're a little bit stiff for me, but they really are masterpieces. I mean, they are that good. There's a reason they're regarded as some of the best movies ever made. There are a few things better, in my opinion, than cooking pasta sauce all day, making a big old bowl of sauce and meatballs and spaghetti, and sitting down and binge watching The Godfather. Not 3, just fucking skip 3. But I won't belabor The Godfather. If you haven't seen it by now, I'll even give you permission to turn this video off and just watch it. Speaking of this video, if you'd like to support the channel, you can do so a number of ways. You can buy a t-shirt like this one. I designed them myself, so that's kind of cool. Or you could become a Patreon supporter and get a free t-shirt depending on which tier you pick. Links to all of this in the description below. In a similar vein to The Godfather, there's a Sergio Leone movie that is not a Western called Once Upon a Time in America. It stars James Woods, Robert De Niro. A young Jennifer Connelly is in this movie as well. Really great movie. Very long because it's Leone, so everything's really long and stretched out, but beautiful to look at. Great crime story. Great just American immigrant story. Really fantastic stuff. And again, one of his better movies that is not an actual Western, even though his Westerns are like the best Westerns ever made. For a Western movie somewhat inspired by Leone's Westerns, Unforgiven, which is actually directed and stars Clint Eastwood, and I think is possibly his best movie. It's tough to say because he really is one of the best filmmakers still working today. I can't wait to see The Mule. That comes out soon. I'll be reviewing that on the channel. But Unforgiven is a masterpiece, and it's so cool that Eastwood did it because he was older in life. He is like the king of Westerns, and to do this like postmodern Western that really sort of analyzes that lifestyle in a different way and to look through it through a different lens, I think is just an incredible thing. So not only is it a good movie on its own, but it also has this sort of amazing relationship with old Westerns, which is why I really love this one. A severely underrated movie is We Own the Night. Now, it is not a masterpiece, but in my opinion, it is very close. It does not have a very good Rotten Tomatoes score. I've watched it a couple of times recently, and of course I watched it back when it came out. But recently I really looked at it close, trying to find out why. And I can't really figure out why this one's not got more credit. It's really well acted. It's an incredible story. It's really well directed. There's some incredible scenes really featuring Joaquin Phoenix's performances that really, the camera's placed perfectly. He's perfect in it. It's just so well told, and I don't know why it's not rated higher. If you disagree or can't really remember this movie, I strongly recommend going back and checking it out. The Aviator is the only Martin Scorsese movie currently on the platform, and he's had one on every month or so, but right now you can watch The Aviator. They keep putting up Scorsese movies because soon enough, in 2019, The Irishman comes out, which is his next movie, and it comes out as a Netflix original. You're going to be able to watch it directly on the platform, and it stars De Niro, Pacino, Pesci, and even Gino Caffarelli, who was my first guest ever on the podcast. If you didn't know I had a podcast, there's a link to that in the description. But that said, The Aviator is a fairly overlooked Scorsese movie just because so many of his movies are so good. This one's no exception. It just doesn't really stand out that much against his other films, but DiCaprio is amazing in it. It's beautifully shot, just the production design. It's an amazing historical piece on top of being this really gripping story about somebody suffering from severe OCD. And the editing and the cinematography does such a good job of telling that story and sort of sharing the just sheer terror that Howard Hughes felt at just like washing his hands in a public bathroom. So if you never saw this one, carve out 3 hours to watch it sometime over the holidays. One that is a super downer of a movie, but is a very important movie to watch, I think, is United 93. Now, this is about the United 93 airplane that crashed. It was taken over by terrorists on 9/11, but it's the one that the passengers actually overtook and they weren't able to fly it, so it did crash and everybody died. I mean, that was the story. There's no spoilers there. But this is directed by Paul Greengrass, who did the bulk of the Bourne movies. He does a very good job with what appears to be like real life stuff. He did Captain Phillips. Everything feels very real. The actors in this are not very well known, so it feels like it's almost like a documentary. Very well told. I saw this in the theater and just like kind of had to sit there for a few minutes after it was over. It's one of those types of movies, so don't just watch it flippantly. Watch it when you're in the right mood to take something like this in. On a different note, one of the best sci-fi movies currently on the platform, Moon, is actually directed by Duncan Jones, who is the son of David Bowie, and it stars Sam Rockwell, who is another one of my favorite actors. With 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri, he really got a lot of recognition. He's playing George W. Bush soon, which looks incredible. That movie looks insane. But he's great here. He's always great. I always love seeing him. Even in bad movies, he's great. But this one's good. He is the sole inhabitant of a space station on the moon. So you get that sort of Castaway thing where he's having to do a performance all by himself. He does a great job with that. But then he uncovers a mystery. And this one really starts to go down a rabbit hole. It's a very, very interesting story. I like this one a lot. If you're a sci-fi nut and you never saw Moon, watch it soon because it's been on Netflix for a while and I do not expect it to be there much longer. If you like this type of content, definitely click the subscribe button and be sure to click the little bell icon so you get notified when I put a new video out. But I put ones out like this every single week, multiple times a week. The Gift is an incredible thriller starring Jason Bateman, of all people, and actually directed by Joel Edgerton, who you know from a ton of movies. He's in this one as well. But he wrote and directed this. It's his debut as a director, and I think he killed it. This is like a Hitchcockian-style thriller, and when I saw it, I knew this guy has a future as a director, and it turns out I'm absolutely right, because his latest movie just came out. It's called Boy Erased. It stars Russell Crowe, Nicole Kidman. It's getting all sorts of praise critically, so I think we're going to see more and more movies directed by him. I hope so. I like him a lot as an actor, but after seeing The Gift, I like him even more as a director. On a very, very similar note, The Invitation is about a guy who goes to a dinner party at his ex-wife's house, and she's acting very, very culty with her and her friends. He's not sure what's going on, and then he begins to fear for his safety and the safety of the other people at the party, but he's also not sure if he's just paranoid, if he's reading into things, and it's very, very well directed. I mean, it's a complex concept, and it really takes a very capable director to bring that to screen. It's very, very well done. I've watched it multiple times. It's obviously it's on this list. It's one of my favorite movies currently on Netflix. Another reason to watch it soon is this director. It's a female director. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but her next film is called Destroyer. It also stars Nicole Kidman. It looks incredible. It comes out around Christmas. I will definitely be watching that one and be talking about it here on the channel as well. Cold in July is a really, really cool little thriller. It stars Michael C. Hall from Dexter, and it's directed by the guy who did Stakeland. So that director did a couple of horror movies and then switched over to this really cool thriller that has some great cinematography, some great acting. It's a good story, but really one of the reasons I love this movie so much is because it kept changing its direction. It would go one way, and then something would happen and the car would just completely go in the other direction. And it did that several times, and I never really knew where we were going to end up. And we ultimately end up in a very, very dark place, but it's really well told. And as far as ones on this list, it's probably the most underrated and underwatched movie on Netflix that really, really deserves more eyeballs. I've talked about it multiple times. The fact that it makes this list probably means it's time for me to retire that recommendation. So if you're new here, be sure to go back and maybe revisit some of my older videos to get additional recommendations. Speaking of underrated, Wind River was one of the most underrated movies of 2017. I really, really like this one. It's directed by the same guy who wrote Sicario, Hell or High Water, a really, really strong, capable director, as well as a good writer. Stars Jeremy Renner as a somewhat of a detective. It is a detective story. It takes place out in Wyoming in the snow. It revolves around a murder, and it's just fairly simple in the way it's put together, but it's just a very, very good, balanced movie. It's one of those movies that you might only want to watch once just because there is some raw elements to it, but I really, really did like this one a lot. Cannot recommend it enough. Another one that I absolutely love and have talked about to death on the channel is Train to Busan, which is the best zombie movie to have come out in the past several years. It's from South Korea, so you will have to read subtitles, but it's so good. It's so entertaining to watch. It's frightening at times. It's thrilling at times. It's heartbreaking at times, but it's so well balanced. Like, I've watched this with people and other people close to me that I've recommended it to. Just tell me afterwards how much they really like this one. It's the most commented on the channel. If you've never seen it, do yourself a favor, watch it. Be careful who you watch it with because there is blood and guts. I mean, it is zombies biting people's necks out. But if anybody can handle that, this is one you could watch with family, brothers, sisters, in-laws. You may not want to watch with an older audience. You may not want to watch with kids that are too little. But it does have some family elements there that I've watched this around the holidays and we've enjoyed it. And then finally, for one of my favorite movies on the platform, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. For me, this one kind of gets forgotten about as a Spielberg classic just because Jaws and E.T. sort of overshadow it. But to me, this one has sort of the best of both of those worlds. You get the magic of the aliens. You also get sort of the terror that you get with Jaws or the uncertainty. There's this scary element, not just from the UFOs, but also from the government and the way they act in the situation. But you're ultimately left with one of the most beautiful sequences ever put on film, in my opinion, is the arrival of the aliens with the music composed by John Williams, the tune that allows them to communicate. I love that so much. It's actually the ringtone on my phone. But if you never saw this one, the holidays is a perfect time to watch it. It's long. It's a great one to watch over Thanksgiving weekend. But that concludes my list. Let me know in the comments which of these recommendations you will be watching. But I will keep making videos like this as long as you keep watching them. I appreciate you watching this one, and you will see me on the next one.